What should estranged parents do and not do if they hope to reconcile with their children? I realize that the parents who most need to hear this are probably not going to be very receptive to what I have to say in this video, and I am fully expecting that they will be angry in my comments for my tips. But I figured, there must be some estranged parents out there who are open to hearing what might be conducive to reconciliation, so let's give this a try. From my perspective as a doctor of psychology who focuses particularly on relationship dynamics, let's say that your adult child comes to you and tells you that either they no longer want a relationship with you, or they have certain dissatisfactions or resentments, or they want to reconnect after a period of estrangement. What should you do and what should you not do? Let's talk about it. So let's start with some of the do's of estrangement. What should estranged parents do? Listen non-defensively. What does this mean exactly? Listening sounds simple, not interrupting, hearing what someone has to say, but it's not just hearing. It's truly trying to understand what the other person is saying and where they're coming from. In your head, imagine how you might paraphrase what the other person is trying to communicate. Maybe even try saying it out loud. So you can say, so if I'm understanding correctly, what you're saying is that you felt that I expected perfection of you growing up. You don't need to agree with what they're saying. You just need to be on the same page that you are understanding what they're trying to communicate. That's what listening means. Now, being non-defensive means you're not perceiving things as an attack when they're not an attack. Your child might have some things to say that feel unfair or untrue from your perspective. They might say things that make you feel bad or guilty or ashamed, but they have a right to their perspective just as you do. So the last thing you want to do is to lash out at them for simply stating their perspective. The last thing you want to do is come off defensive when they're not being offensive, when they're just trying to share their perspective. And even if you genuinely think they are attacking you, if they're genuinely saying like you were a terrible person, you're the worst mother in the world, I encourage you to ask yourself whether defending yourself gets you any closer to your goals. People need to feel heard, even when they're wrong. You don't have to pretend to agree with them. You don't have to, bend over to appease them. But putting yourself on the defensive is only going to make the other person go harder on the offensive. It sets up a toxic dynamic where both of you are leaning into a role. They've decided, okay, I'm going to play offense. You've decided I'm going to play defense, and then you just go at it. So if you don't want to fall into that toxic cycle, then don't be defensive. Listen non-defensively. Before we go into some more do's and don'ts for estranged parents, let's talk about something else that gets people really mad. Healthcare. No one likes going to the doctor. It's a hassle to have to find a provider who takes your insurance, call them, wait however many months they have an appointment for you, and hope your situation doesn't worsen before then. The longer I stay in my current country, the more I myself have been noticing some of the pitfalls of my local healthcare system. My chief complaint right now is simply just getting a hold of doctors, literally getting them to answer the phone and to locate the type of doctor that I need. And while there's not much that I miss about the healthcare in the US, there is one thing I do miss, and that is being able to use the sponsor of today's video, which is ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website designed to help you find high-quality in-network providers, pick the one you want, and instantly book an appointment. It solves literally all of the issues I just described. You find an in-network provider, get a hold of them for an appointment quite easily without having to pick up the phone, get an appointment very soon. A lot of them are within 24 to 72 hours. ZocDoc has a database of over 100,000 providers in a wide range of specialties. And here's the craziest part, it's literally at no cost to you. It's completely free. I just love the ease of finding a healthcare provider in your area who also takes your insurance, being able to see reviews, choosing the most convenient appointment time, how the office just simply approves your appointment and then you're good to go. So if you've been needing to find a doctor for something, stop procrastinating. It is really important to take control of your health and do this today as soon as you're finished with this video. Click the link in my video description to easily book local top-rated doctors who can see you quickly. Now back to some do's for estranged parents seeking reconciliation with their adult children. What should you do if you want to make up with your child? You also want to validate their feelings. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. Validate their feelings? What if their feelings aren't valid? By validate their feelings, I don't mean legitimize their feelings. Validating means acknowledging someone's right to feel a certain way, acknowledging that their emotion probably makes sense for them given how they are perceiving the situation. Not that they are necessarily perceiving the situation correctly, just that you can understand how they would come to that natural emotional conclusion given the way they see the situation. For example, there was this one time I remember I was hiking. It was an area where there were snakes on the trail, and I am terrified of snakes. I don't even like to look at photos of them. I thought there was a snake under where I had just stepped, and I just immediately hurtled into the sky, 3 feet high. It was crazy. And it was actually a leaf. So was my emotion irrational in that moment? Yes. Did I react disproportionately? Absolutely. But in that moment, what I needed to hear was, wow, you got really scared there. Not, are you insane? Why did you jump like that? That is so obviously not a snake. How could you think that was a snake? Don't ever make someone feel like there's something wrong with them for having a certain emotion. That's the definition of emotional invalidation, which is not what we're aiming for here. What validating someone's feelings sounds like instead is acknowledging their emotional experience, saying things like, I can tell you're angry with me. Putting yourself in their shoes, which could sound like, I'd probably feel pretty angry too if someone had made me feel like I always need to be perfect. Remember, you don't need to agree with the premises of the emotion. You don't need to agree that you made them feel like they always have to be perfect. You just need to agree that if someone made them feel that way, you can understand how they would feel angry. Emotions are like fire alarms. Until you acknowledge them, they're going to keep getting louder and louder. If you want to work through how your child feels, even if you think they have a faulty alarm, you need to first acknowledge it. You need to first acknowledge their feelings, or else they're going to keep getting louder and louder and louder. If you want a much more in-depth video on what it does and doesn't mean to validate someone's feelings, check out this video up here. Do process your own feelings with a therapist. Now, after your child has told you what's going on, that is not the time to get into a back and forth debate or to make your case. Remember, what they want is to feel heard. They've probably been feeling unheard for a really long time, whether you realize it or not. Not arguing with them doesn't mean letting them walk all over you. It just means taking some time to work through what they said to you in a more appropriate setting. When someone tells you they've been feeling let down on you, that's not the time to make it about your own emotions. For now, I just want you to imagine that your task is to understand where your child is coming from and to make them feel heard. But you probably will have a lot of painful emotions that come up for you. Guilt, shame, anger, grief. And it's super important for you to have a place to work through those. And this is not the place. The goal is to get a neutral, professional third party's opinion on the situation, to work through your feelings there, to figure out ways to regulate your own emotions that don't involve your child, and then you can come back to your child and have a more clear-headed discussion about how to move forward. And please definitely get a legitimate therapist, not some unlicensed coach you found online, not an uncertified Christian counselor. I recommend seeking someone who specializes in family dynamics, either someone with a psychodynamic perspective, like an attachment-based orientation, or a systems-based orientation, like Bowenian structural family systems, and someone who will be direct and hold you accountable when necessary, not someone who will just validate you no matter what you say. Do take accountability for things you could have done better in the past. Now, in therapy or in your own reflection time, you may discover that there were things you could have done better as a parent. This does not mean you were an all bad parent. It doesn't make you a bad parent to acknowledge your mistakes. In fact, I would argue it makes you a better parent to acknowledge where you fell short. So hopefully by this point, you've learned in therapy all the tools for how to deal with these feelings of shame and guilt, and you're strong enough to come back to your child and to apologize for the ways in which you did hurt them. And look, all parents hurt their children in one way or another. So if you're unable to recognize that, there's probably some level of defensiveness going on there. If you're unable to say, you know what, yeah, I dropped the ball here, or I could have done this differently. There's no parent on this earth who doesn't have something they would be able to fill in the blank there. You should be able to fill in the blank there. Now, there might be a little bit of disagreement between you and your child about the ways in which you dropped the ball. You might say, I wish I'd been more involved in your life, when really their concern is, I wish you hadn't yelled at me so much. And if that's the case, I think it's worth reflecting, are you taking quasi-responsibility? Are you taking responsibility for something that feels less shameful that's kind of a distraction from the real issue. And that's also something to process in therapy. Also, taking accountability means no self-victimizing. So no saying things like, I guess I must have been the worst mother in the world. No fishing for reassurance from your child. No excuses like, let me just explain why I did this. When you take accountability, focus 100% on apologizing for your wrongs with absolutely no expectation of anything in return. Do not expect to feel better as a result of it. Do not expect for your child to help you regulate your emotion. The point is not for you to feel better, it's for your child to feel better. Do take responsibility for what needs to change in the future. Despite what I think a lot of estranged parents think, most estranged children don't care so much about what happened in the past as they do about what's currently happening. Most people don't want to rehash old wounds with people they're currently on good terms with. So after you've acknowledged what you could have done better in the past, it's time to think to the future. That's really the issue here. What needs to look different moving forward? So this is where it's important to ask them, what do you need me to do differently moving forward? In what way do you think our relationship needs to change? How can I help us get on the right track? You might be thinking, well, why is it on me? Why is the responsibility on me? Because, my friend, you are the parent. It's kind of how it works. The parent is responsible, okay? And if you want your child to also take responsibility, the best way to do that is by modeling taking responsibility. And if there are things you want to be different on their side in the future, then that's totally fine to bring up. You can say, I'd like for us to talk more casually, not just when it feels like you need something from me. Or you can say, it would be helpful if you could tell me in the moment when something upsets you, rather than letting it fester over time. You can absolutely say these things. It doesn't have to feel like a one-way street. Just make sure that the things you're actually requesting of your child are appropriate and respect them as a human being and as an adult. This connects to the next one, which is do respect your child's boundaries. If your child asks you to not contact them, then don't contact them, at least for a period of time. I understand sometimes parents are tempted to reach out on special occasions, and I can't say if that's right or not for your case, because sometimes that is the olive branch that people need to reconnect, but other times it's perceived as violating that person's boundaries. So it really depends on your specific situation. The important piece I want to drive home, though, is that you need to give your child the time and space to process and breathe, to not pressure them into taking away your pain or into speaking to you when they're not ready to do so yet. If you want to ensure that a child doesn't reconcile with you, then keep pressuring them into talking to you when they've already told you no. That's a surefire way to get it. Now, if your child has asked you to do something differently moving forward and it's reasonable, then genuinely do what they asked you to do. And usually it just boils down to treating them like they're an autonomous adult. The dynamics have shifted from childhood. They're not a child anymore. They're your child, your adult child, but they are an adult. And they want the right to make their own decisions, to have their preferences be respected, to have a relationship with you on equal footing. And you might be thinking, well, I'm the parent, we're not equals. Okay, listen, if that's the way you see things, then a healthy relationship might not be possible with them moving forward. Because in order for a relationship to move forward in a healthy way, you need to see and treat each other as equals. And if you want to learn more about the foundations of a healthy relationship, you can find that in the connection course, a lot more in depth. Do find meaning outside your identity as a parent. I think estranged parents often struggle with identity issues once their relationship with their child is compromised because it feels like their whole world is crashing down on them. They've identified with parenthood for so long that if they don't have this, it's like, well, what do I have? And it's generally not a good idea to put all your eggs in one basket, but especially if your child has indicated they need some space from you, this might be a really good time to find some other sources of fulfillment. So get in touch with your values, your hobbies, your passions, your loved ones. Try something new, socialize, take up a new goal. You are more than just a parent, and you are more than just an estranged parent. The last thing you want to do is get stuck in an identity rut and to have this sort of end your life. It doesn't have to be that way. What about the things you should not do if you're an estranged parent? Don't get into an argument about whose version of reality is correct. You have a right to your perspective. They have a right to theirs. Stop trying to convince them of your perspective because that could be perceived as gaslighting. Don't put your child on blast, whether it's on the internet or in real life. Don't write a book about them. Don't create a TikTok account dedicated to what happened with them. Don't tell your estrangement story time on YouTube or anything like that. There's literally no better way to ensure that your child never speaks to you again. And there's a good chance that you're revealing certain things about yourself in the process, certain blind spots that you have about yourself that other people are aware of now. They see, oh, like you were evasive about this aspect of your estrangement story time, or like you lacked self-awareness when you were talking about this. They can see those things now, and you can't. And what even is the purpose of this? Usually it's to seek validation from strangers. But does that help you get any closer to your goal of ultimately reconciling with your child? Is the fleeting and not even guaranteed validation of strangers online worth sacrificing your relationship with your child? Don't make estrangement your entire identity. If you've made parenthood your entire identity, then when you're estranged from your child, it might be tempting to make estrangement your entire identity, to kind of like usurp it with that. Don't make it your brand. Don't make it the only thing that you ever talk about. Don't let it be the only thing you ever think about. Remember, branch out. You are more than this. You're more than a parent, and you're more than an estranged parent. And if you get stuck in the identity of being an estranged parent, then you're probably going to fulfill that prophecy. And you're going to stay estranged forever because of your behavior. And lastly, don't get other people involved, for the love of God. Don't go to other people in your child's life as a way of getting your child to reach out to you. It will only push them further away, it will be perceived as manipulative, and it is in fact a form of triangulation. Don't begin smearing your child's name to mutual acquaintances or ruining their relationships with other people. It's one thing to have an issue with someone, but I think it's absolutely diabolical to then, because you have an issue with one person, decide to ruin their other relationships as well. Decide to take away their supports. Someone not wanting to be in your life anymore is not a hate crime, and you are not entitled to ruining their life over it. Keep your honor and your dignity by keeping this between you and your child. And that can involve leaning on supports, your therapist, your partner, your friends, but do so in a way that doesn't affect your child's life at all, with people who aren't going to try to get involved or treat them any differently because of it. Ideally, with people that they don't know. So I hope this was helpful to any of you who are genuinely looking for, okay, I'm an estranged parent, what is something I can do and what are some things I shouldn't do? I would love to hear from both estranged parents and estranged children alike. If you're an estranged child, how would you react if your parents did the things that I mentioned or didn't do the things I mentioned not doing? And how did your parents actually react in actuality?